Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian. He never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian peasants, and the way they were able to reach out and steal the election.
The coronavirus has now claimed 737 Macedonian lives, the highest rate in southeastern Europe. While the coronavirus rages, the government will try to start school this week on October 1 month after the traditional start. Will it succeed? And the government continues its campaign of political persecution. This week, Gordana Yankelowska, the former Minister of the Interior, began serving a 4-year prison sentence on trumped-up charges. She gave birth to a son just 2 years ago, meaning her son is going to grow up without his mother. However, Zoran Zaev, his brother Vice, and other members of the Zaev family clan, who have been accused but never tried of many crimes, go about their businesses, which is the abuse of state power. On the subject of Zoran Zaev, we here at the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast predict he will cave into Bulgarian demands rather soon, and that he as prime minister will agree with the Bulgarian chauvinists that Macedonian hero Goce Delchev really was quote-unquote Bulgarian. Oh, one more thing. Zaev was recently in Greece at a roundtable sponsored by The Economist, a leftist paper. While he was there to ostensibly discuss economic issues with his Greek counterpart, Zaev also told Mitsotakis that the name of the Macedonian Archaeological Museum will now be changed to the Archaeological Museum of North Macedonia. The removal of the adjective Macedonian continues apace. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin calling in from Skopje, Macedonia.
Cvetin, we are recording this, episode 87, on Tuesday, the 29th of September, the penultimate day of September. This will drop tomorrow on the last day of September. School starts, as I mentioned in the monologue, the day after that on October 1. Let's start there. Number one, I'm assuming that since Macedonian school children have basically been without school since early March, the government says that it's got plans in place, some sort of, obviously, e-learning. What do you predict? What's going to happen?
Yeah, well, they started opening the kindergartens, so some, in an attempt to have the parents, the mothers especially, go back to work. Recently, mothers were with children initially under 10, and then under 6 years of age, were told that they can stay out of work and, have their jobs protected unless they work in the private sector. And many use this option, but now with the kindergartens open, the government is instructing the parents to go back to work, mothers, in some cases fathers. And immediately, as you can expect, there is one case in one kindergarten in Skopje, two in another, one in Bitola, one in Cvetin. So, parents are panicked. And Macedonia has publicly state-run childcare, but also the grandparents chime in. So there are not enough seats in kindergartens for all children. So it's a big mess there, and it will probably translate into an even bigger mess as the school year begins on October 1st. First 3 grades of elementary school and some high schools which are trade-oriented, like, the agriculture school in Bitola or veterinary, stuff like that. They will begin going to school, in-person teaching. And, both parents and children and teachers are panicking about this. And they're also set up a major, basically they use the platform developed by Microsoft. Last year they were using Google Classroom. This year they've switched to Microsoft Teams, and basically they've been opening accounts for each child in the country to log into this, and they're having the teachers go to school and give video lessons online, basically to the classes who are assembled in their homes in front of their computers. This will apply to grades 4th to 9 in elementary school and most of the high schools. And it's a big mess. It keeps crashing over these past few days. They've been testing this before it starts, and the website is down most of the time. And there's a website dedicated to this. The platform works more or less okay, I guess, because Microsoft made it. So, but to the extent that teachers will be able to make it work and figure out how to. There are already hilarious videos of teachers trying to, not as savvy as you and I on recording audio and video. They're desperately trying to record something, frustrated children, losing passwords. But it's going to be I'm kind of optimistic generally. I mean, I like the idea of modernizing education, breaking it up, homeschooling and all that good stuff. So this is maybe, a very modest first step in this direction.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad. I'm very glad to hear you say that. And for our listeners, we really didn't discuss this beforehand. This is what you're hearing is what we're discussing now. So I didn't know that you were going to tell me you're a little bit optimistic, but that's good. I mean, I like what you're talking about. The kind of, you didn't say it this way, but the silver lining, and that maybe going forward, once the coronavirus is behind us, this does open up more possibilities for homeschool, et cetera. I've got 2 nieces and a nephew here with one of my sisters, and then the other sister has a young girl, my other niece. But the 2 nieces and the nephew were homeschooled for most of their school years, and then they went to a Christian school, a private Christian school, and the other niece is in a Christian school now, but she's also doing home. They do it kind of a mixed thing, homeschool and then 2 days a week at the school. So anyway, all that to say, yes, maybe this will open up the opportunities for that. On the current situation, I'm kind of curious, was it an issue of the teachers because a lot of them are older, didn't want to be in the classrooms with the kids and then have that risk? Or, because that's the situation here with a lot of schools.
Yeah, the teachers loved the first option that was in place between March and June of last year. I mean, this year, sorry. I'm completely forgetting which month or year it is.
Don't worry, 2020 will continue into 2021 and 2022 and anyway.
It's all a blur. So they love the Google Classroom setup. They basically stayed at home, and they would just send out like an assignment, like a brief assignment to the students, like a few sentences long, and then children and their parents would work on the assignments, math, literature, essay writing, history, stuff like that. What little history we have left, and send it back to the teachers, who would then ostensibly grade it. Everybody got an A in the end.
Yay! Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah, and they loved this option, but it's apparently, and they were pressuring the government to allow them to carry on with this minimum effort education mode into the next year, but it seemed like it's way too much for the government to allow this. So now they're going to have the teachers go to school and record and conduct classes from classrooms with a computer and internet to their virtual pupils. And I guess some kids who do not have computers will be allowed to attend in person, and probably in some mountain schools, like small villages, 5 students in total. I mean, definitely they will have some kind of teaching there. But I mean, somebody's going to get sick somewhere. There's going to be a big mess. Some countries, like Albania, they've started before, like a few weeks before us, and this is what happened, obviously. There's a big ruckus, and Zaev moved Mila Tsarovska around. I've discussed her often, the very far left, postmodernist SDSM Rising Star, and he had her in the Labor and Welfare Department, which is great. You just walk around distributing money to poor families, to Roma, and buy their votes, which we saw during the election. Then he made her deputy economy minister, which is, she was tangentially to blame for the economic collapse. But then there was the finance minister, Nina Angelovska, who was so lost in space. So she managed to pluck all the accolades for the economic collapse. And then now he gives her this position. So basically, Zaev is afraid of Mila Tsarovska, that she will, in the first time he slips, that she will be taking over the party. So he gave her now the most explosive, the worst imaginable job in the world, like trying to handle panicky teachers and crying children and scared parents and have some sort of semblance of education, forcing parents to buy computers and tablets and forcing elderly teachers to log into Microsoft Teams. So this is it's going to collapse, but then maybe if we ever have a proper reformist in the mold of Nikola Gruevski again, this could be a good basis on which to build.
Right. Okay. Well, interesting, especially the political machinations that you allude to behind the scenes there. We'll kind of have to monitor that. You made a quip there about the history classes and how there's less and less. I like the way you put that. Less and less history to teach. And that is something that, and as I mentioned in the opening monologue, the Bulgarians are really clamping down or ramping up, I should say, their attempt to force Macedonia to cave in and agree that Goce Delchev was quote unquote a Bulgarian, that Macedonian history is really Bulgarian history, etc. And of course, the background behind all this, and I write about this in my column this week, is Macedonia is supposed to finally, maybe eventually, who the hell knows, start talks with the European Union. Still no date, but Bulgaria put out that memo that we talked about last week, saying that Macedonia has to do this, that, and the other, and has to dance here and kneel there and raise its fist there and do whatever it is that the Bulgarians say. And I think we both agree that Zoran Zaev will figure out a way to basically agree with their demands. What did he say yesterday? I was reading something. That we Macedonians can't exclusively claim him.
Yeah.
And that was that was the same argument on the name. We can't exclusively claim the name Macedonia, and that was never an argument. The Greeks want to call their region Macedonia. That's their business. The Bulgarians want to call Goce Delchev a Bulgarian. That's their business. But what you can't have is these two sides dictating to Macedonia their will, their history, their demands. But
they can.
Well, yes, okay, yeah, you're correct. As many leaders, I don't like that word, as many politicians and unelected bureaucrats in NATO, the European Union, and the United States Department of State said long before Zoran Zaev and Ali Ahmeti were at the helm of the government of Macedonia, they said in so many words, you, Macedonia, are not in the clubs, and all these other countries are in the clubs, and if you want to be a member, then you have to agree to what they say. I went back, you'll remember this, it's a good one. Maybe we can put this in the podcast here, the clip of Jens Stoltenberg. Really, I mean, he's the most mild-mannered Norwegian. Norwegians are generally pretty mild-mannered. But here he is, this was, 2 years ago. It was a 30-second clip of him just absolutely throwing his hands up in the air and moving them wildly like an Italian and gesticulating and says, you are not in the club, and if you want to be in the club, you have to agree with what the Greeks say. Actually, that was more of a Greek accent than a Norwegian accent.
No, it was good. I think you got it.
But anyway, it was just, this mild-mannered man just absolutely frustrated because the Macedonians wouldn't bow and demand to what the Greeks said. And, of course, eventually they did. Zoran Zaev said that this would be a preview of next week's column. Zoran Zaev basically said we must live by lies, whereas Solzhenitsyn told us to live not by lies. But anyway, that's Bulgaria, and then as I alluded to or as I mentioned in the monologue, Zaev has pledged to change the Macedonian Archaeological Museum into the Archaeological Museum of North Macedonia. What's next on the list?
There is the implementation of the Prespa Treaty in Greece is now stalled because now it's up to the Conservative Party, which was nominally against the Prespa Treaty. Mitsotakis and New Democracy, they opposed the Prespa Treaty. Now it's up to them to vote in on the. There are some sorts of memorandums of cooperation in this or that area, double taxation, stuff like that. And now the left is saying, okay, we demand a roll call. We want every member of parliament to stand up and say ohi or nay, yes or no to this. And then we want apologies from all the 150 something members of parliament from New Democracy who oppose this, but now are implementing this treaty. So now the Greeks say, okay, it's not that important for us to get embarrassed over this. We're just throwing away all these ancillary bits of the Prespa Treaty to the side. Zaev was there apparently to discuss a gas pipeline between Greece and Macedonia and this LNG plant, which the US will maybe sometimes at some point build in Greece. And now the Greeks want money from us. We are supposed to be partially funding this. So we have at some point get gas from Greece. That's obviously never going to happen, never going to get built. The other option, which the US and the Greeks are promoting, is a pipeline through Turkey and Greece, and which originates in Azerbaijan and drives through Nagorno-Karabakh very closely. So we're never going to get gas. That's the bottom line here.
So, sorry, I have to interrupt. The reason that I'm laughing so much, and the reason you mentioned that made me laugh, some listeners may not know that right now Azerbaijan and Armenia are at war. I don't know if I haven't even checked the news today to see how low level or high level it is, but dozens.
It's getting uglier.
Is it? Okay, yeah. And of course that brings in both Turkey on one side and Russia on the other side. So in the disputed region, which you mentioned, Nagorno-Karabakh has been disputed for I don't know how many decades, but anyway, that is very funny. Sorry.
Yeah, in any country with geographical determination, and Nagorno is means upper in Russian. It's doomed from the start.
Mean north?
Yeah, upper. That would have been one of the versions for Macedonia. It would have been Gorna Macedonia.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And this is Nagorno. That's the same. That would mean upper, not northern, but similar. The Greeks are pulling, basically ignoring the treaty, while the Bulgarians, it's not just Goce, it's gotten much worse with them. The Goce Delchev, the discussion over whether he was Bulgarian or Macedonian was just a starting point. Now there is, they sent out a memorandum which is exceptionally harshly written, and this is sent to the European Council, and it says that, Macedonians originate from Bulgarians, a newly created nation. They even give a date when we were made up, Ilinda and the Asnom assembly during World War II.
Right.
So they say the language is Bulgarian, and so this is all going to be part of the never-ending accession talks. Even, Nikola Dimitrov, who's now in charge of EU integration, said, well, if we do not open accession talks by October, I think, he said we need to acknowledge that we have no European perspective, which is a shocking statement from Dimitrov, who celebrated the opening of accession talks so many times by now, only to be foiled every time again and again. So it's Zaev basically ordered the historians in the committee to say, okay, look at this through a positive lens, basically ordering them, okay, whatever Bulgarians want, you sign on to this. But then it's not only this issue. There are many other issues which the Bulgarians put onto and they're right. I mean, this is in the treaty. The treaty states that they have the right to block Macedonian new accession talks because if we do not deliver on their historical and national identity demands, and they keep telling to Dimitrov and Zaev, you signed it, we wrote it together. I mean, we wrote it, you signed it. Pacta sunt servanda, the treaties need to be upheld. So the latest one was we censored a song from this legendary song about the collapse of the Archbishopry of Ohrid. All our nations were built around the church because this was the identity that was allowed in Ottoman times. So the Bulgarians had a church, the Greeks had a church, we had a church, but then Greek bishops in Tsarigrad, in Istanbul, they bribed the Sultan to withdraw the approval, the right of the Macedonian church in Ohrid to exist as an independent separate church in 1762. And this led to Greek and later even Bulgarian encroachment on Macedonian lands through their churches. They started, in absence of the Ohrid archbishopry, the Greek and the Bulgarian bishops started setting up shops and schools across the country. Later the Serbs as well, and this grew into a fight for the hearts and minds of the Macedonians. And less than 100 years later, a major opponent of the Greek bishops, Grigor Perlichev, a great poet who was fluent in Greek, wrote his epic songs both in Greek and Macedonian. He wrote a song, a very touching song, like 17 minutes long, extensive epic song about how the Greek bishops bribed the Sultan and took away our church, and portrays the last Archbishop of Ohrid, Arsenius, as he meets the flock in the Cathedral of St. Clement in Ohrid, and then tells them, they will send to you Greek bishops, Greek priests. They will have the faces of saints, but their hearts will be of wolves, and they will try to create feuds between you, between a son and a father, and between two brothers, to divide the nation, divide the country. And there was a celebration a few days ago to honor the establishment of the monastery of St. John Bigorski. And the song was performed, and they notably omitted these verses from the song where he names, he talks about the Greek propaganda and the Greek bishops in this, he ironically calls them the worthy Greek bishops, he is mocking them. So this was cut out, so we can't even sing an epic song about the, how our nation was snuffed at its origin, what was supposed to be the nucleus of the Macedonian nation.
Right.
And, this is the level of censorship we're experiencing. And then somebody posted, an actor who noticed this, and he posted this on Facebook, and everybody shared it, etc. So our friend Philip, who is now an official, through his Metamorphosis organization, he's now the official Facebook fact checker. So he's now going around people who posted this on Facebook, and he appends a comment in English and then in Macedonian that this article, this Facebook post, contains fake news, and according to him, it's a fact that the song was performed without these verses, but he says, well, it was performed in other occasions as well without the same verses. This is his explanation. So we now have Philip Stoyanovsky fact-checking people on Facebook, completely obscenely, completely out of this world comments like, yeah, it's true that the song was edited, but it's been done before, so what's the big deal? That's the level of...
Thank you, Philip, mein Führer. Bloody stormtrooper. Well, he's, when the revolution comes, as we've discussed many times before, he'll be one of the first ones to go. But he doesn't really understand that. Goce Delchev, of course, is one of four men mentioned in the Macedonian national anthem. Will he have to go? The town of
Which
Delchevo,
was also edited.
Yeah. The town of Delchevo, named after Goce Delchev. Goce Delchev is buried in Skopje. It's Sveti Spas.
Yep.
Right there in the middle, right below Kale. Yeah.
the Bulgarians consider the communist leader Georgi Dimitrov, who gave the remains of Goce Delchev to us for burial in Skopje, in the capital of Macedonia, as Goce Delchev himself had a dying wish, apparently, or a testamental wish. They consider him a traitor because he gave the body, and they keep saying, the right is attacking the left in Bulgaria, saying, you're not going to betray this issue, this cause again. We're having them turned into Bulgarians, and that's final. Well, we obviously consider Nikola Dimitrov a traitor, so that's how we both have a traitor of the same name.
Lots of traitors around there. We have them here too, of course. So,
Yeah.
well, let's see. Okay, so that's Bulgaria. We discussed a little bit about Greece there. On a lighter note, talking about regional hegemons that covet Macedonia. You pointed out, I think, on Twitter today that Edi Rama, the Prime Minister of Albania, posted a picture of somewhere in Macedonia and said, "Beautiful Albania."
Yeah.
Where was that? In the Shar Mountains?
Yeah, Shara Mountain, and that's where all the Skopjaners are now going hiking because have the borders closed, so everybody's
Right.
going to this bit of Lishnica, like not a very challenging track, but real pretty apparently.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But
I've been
yeah,
there. Have you never been there?
not there, not that part of Shara.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so
And
but now yeah, I'm curious as to did he do it maliciously or because he's a moron?
yeah, that's the issue now. Everybody thought that he's doing it on purpose, but then somebody found out that there is some village in Albania also called Lishnica, so they're giving him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he was just mistaken and thought that
It's probably because he's
it's
a
in
moron.
Albania. Yeah.
So
But it's very noticeable that this caused such an outrage given past Albanian comments, including Dua Lipa, who posted the map of Greater Albania, and Rama was not beneath saying similar things, not exactly to that level, but I think he actually has a map of Greater Albania somewhere in his office. I think that's often. Yeah, I think he does.
oh yeah, I
I
remember
have to
during
look
the
it up.
when they signed the so-called Tirana platform.
Yeah.
Was it the platform? I think it was called the platform. Yeah, there was a map of Greater Albania there. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well that's a regional wrap up of those that covet Macedonia. The Serbs were quiet this week, I assume.
Yeah. No, they're doing this. They're doing their work much more surreptitiously and much more smarter,
They're
actually,
the
than
yeah
everybody else.
they're the smartest of the
Yeah.
four. So, but anyway, moving on to corruption. So this week the government, as I mentioned, sentenced Gordana Jankulovska, the former Minister of Interior, and that was over the issue of that Mercedes that was purchased. That so a recap for listeners: the Gruevski government purchased a luxury Mercedes armor-plated for the use of dignitaries and VIPs. I think Angela Merkel actually wrote in it.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the exact charges were, but the bottom line is that the Mercedes is still being used by the government of Macedonia for that purpose.
Yep.
And she was sentenced to 4 years in prison on that. She gave birth to a son just a little over 2 years ago. Hopefully she'll be able to see him at some point. What else can you tell us about the other cases that are going on?
Yeah, this is now Zaev reassuming power, and he's now going again with a vengeance against Vimera. There is no point to this anymore. Basically, he changed the name, we got into NATO, the mission was accomplished, but obviously with leftists, with communists, this is what they do. They're bullies, they're totalitarian thugs, and they definitely intend to continue doing this, attacking people from the opposition, and basically some people who were charged in other cases who have turned, bended the knee and joined this DSM, including practically a huge coterie of people around Sasha Miyalkov. They are safe, they are not being charged. Gordana remained dignified. Gordana stayed in the country and never, agreed to criticize its own party or help SDSM electorally. Her and Milena Kievsky, the former transportation minister, and they are now the the two who are the most targeted from the previous Wimmer administration. And that's absolutely outrageous that she's being arrested over a car which was purchased, which was not, the money were not misappropriated. In order to prove that there was abuse, the prosecutors insisted that the benefit, the law states that you need to benefit out of a deal you approve as an office holder in order to be charged with abuse of office. And the benefit was that Gruevski would sometimes use the car for, would be driven from point A to point B, which is, absolute no-brainer. So yeah, she's sent to the Idrizova prison. People have been shocked about this. Some on the left have been gleeful, and they're all going on the list. This is not. There's not going to be reconciliation. There is not going to be let down. This is going to be a fight till the end of the country. And if I was maybe optimistic, maybe it was misunderstood earlier. I'm optimistic for other countries that they will be able to reform themselves using similar approaches. I'm not at the least bit optimistic about North Macedonia, as it's now called. This is not going to work. This is not going to be even a mid-range experiment that's going to work. This is going to go down very quickly and very ugly.
Okay, well, on the issue, sorry, let me just interject briefly, if I may, on the issue of optimism and pessimism and whatnot. Look, in the end, we know who wins. Now, some of our listeners might not understand what I'm talking about right now, but in the end, at the end of all things, all time, everything, God wins. And those who are believers are on that side. The other side loses. In the meantime, however, in the here and now on Earth, these battles continue. I was listening to a podcast the other day with Joe Rogan, who apparently I think is the most listened to podcaster on planet Earth, or at least in the West, and the British author Douglas Murray, who I think is one of the foremost thinkers of our time. And it was funny because Rogan said that he had just moved, his wife and kids had just moved from California to Texas, and he said at least it'll buy us a few more months at the end of times. So
exactly.
You think you got problems in Macedonia? I mean, you obviously you follow American politics quite well. The debate is tonight between President Trump and Vice President Biden, former Vice President Biden. Very, I don't know if you're going to stay up and watch that. I'll actually watch it, I think. But yeah.
I'll get the Twitter roundup in the morning.
Yeah, we'll have more interesting podcast discussions here, moving slightly afield from Macedonia to what's going on here. If we want to talk about pessimism and civil war and the gnashing of teeth and wailing and all that other stuff. So that's coming here. I mean, it's been here for a while, but it's going to go into overdrive.
Chickens coming home to roost and seeing the people on the left in the U.S. who essentially cooked up all the assaults on Macedonia, see them apoplectic over Trump, etc. This is the only thing that cheers me up at this point. Otherwise, this is definitely a U.S. ideological dispute and dysfunction which was exported into Macedonia in 2015, and one out of which we will probably not get out of. There was another trial today. Miliana Kieski was surprisingly was only given a suspended sentence, while Gruevski was sentenced to 1.5 years in prison for allegedly ordering a violent protest, which was not violent and was far cry from nothing extraordinary when compared to protests organized by SDSM, where police officers were actually injured, and SDSM tried to storm the parliament building. This was like, I think they broke a few windows during a protest organized by Vimera to object to SDSM voting to prevent the reconstruction of a church which was torn down by the communist regime. So, it was But yeah, now Gruevski has been sentenced again, and Yanakieski only got a suspended sentence, while a third defendant, which has since, Daniela Rangilov is her name, she's a former member of parliament, who has since joined this faction in Vimera and works to practically help Zaev by creating divisions in Vimera. She had her charges dropped a few days before the sentencing. So, it's all a mockery, it's a sham, it's a joke. The judge who sentenced, so Yankulovsky is the second interior minister sent to prison. The other one is Mitko Chavkov, who personally investigated Zaev for corruption. And this is why he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. And the trial over allegedly not doing enough to protect the parliament during the storming on April 2017, April 27th, when SDSM practically provoked the protesters with their vote in parliament to elect Talat Jaferi as speaker. So the judge who handed these draconian sentences, like 15 years for participating in a protest, she's now unanimously being nominated to the Constitutional Court. So yeah, it's a complete joke. I mean, this is like not even, banana republic. This is a complete, some kind of a bizarre reincarnation of the communist era totalitarian police state, and it's going to end just as the communist era totalitarian police state ended up, and it's possibly even past the point of no return. There is really no chance
at
to
this
reel
at this
this
point
back.
we put into the video in this podcast the file of Ceausescu and his wife being shot. Well, yes. I mean, I would assume that Zoran Zaev and Ali Ahmeti both realize that they have to stay in power forever, for the rest of their lives. Otherwise, then they go through this as well. I am not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a fact of life. It's human nature. It's the way things work. Because they have not been fair in their dealings, because they obtained power in questionable ways, because they have changed and are trying to continue to change the very fundamental nature of what Macedonia is and who Macedonians are through illegal means and ignoring the consent of the governed, a hallmark of any democracy, a very Lockean principle. Because of all that, they will face judgment, certainly in the next life, but in this life as well. And I think they realize that, but they are also afflicted by hubris and believe that they are untouchable. And when you think that, no matter what side of the political aisle, no matter what country, it's part of human nature. Human nature is immutable. When you are afflicted by hubris, you do tend to engage in overreach, and you think that you can continue in this vein as long as forever, and that's just not true. It doesn't work that way. History is littered with examples of this, but we'll see. The end of the story has not been written.
And welcome back to the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. This is Cvetin calling in from Skopje, Macedonia, with Jason Miko calling in from Tucson, Arizona. At the end of the podcast, it's time for our farmers picks. Jason?
Actually, I have to point out, I'm in Oro Valley. Tucson's run by Democrats. Oro Valley's run by Republicans. That's why I live here. So, and I'm closer to the mountains, my beautiful Catalina Mountains. Yes, so we do have a farmer's pick. We've been on a roll here with farmer's picks. Had some beautiful videos in the past, several ones from drone footage of beautiful places in Macedonia. This one, I was alerted to this one by a young Macedonian who follows us on the Twitter sphere, and I think I believe he's Canadian Macedonia. And he mentioned that his grandmother has this YouTube channel called Afternoons with Baba. It's fantastic. And Baba makes Macedonian dishes and Macedonian foods. And the description, I don't even know what her name is. It says, "Hi, I'm Baba. This channel will feature my own recipes of a variety of foods, including authentic Macedonian dishes." And she's got, I don't know, about a dozen of them up here so far. And they're anywhere from just, 8 or 9 minutes to, 30 minutes or so on how to make authentic Macedonian foods. And I'm not going to go into it, but we'll just post that up there for folks to look at. And for those who are a little more adventurous, you can actually follow her recipe and try to make these at home yourself. I might even try and do that. I do a limited menu of Macedonian foods, Cvetin, and I've posted
What
from
can you
time to
do?
time. Well, of course, my favorite is tartor bez luk, because I'm Hungarian and therefore half vampire. I don't do the luk.
All right.
But let's see, I've done. And see, now you put me on the spot, and I'm drawing a blank. And I haven't done it in a long time. Bloody hell! What is it that I always order when I go to Nagic? The chicken or pork rolled with cheese.
Okay, yeah. Like kuviac?
Uviac. Bloody hell! Yes.
All right.
This is terrible. It's morning here. I blame that. Yeah, uviac.
Yeah,
I've done that a number of times. I do a mixed burek, cheese and beef at the same time, and it's not the round one. Obviously, it's more of a casserole size.
That's not allowed.
Come on. I
Okay, fine.
I don't have the round dish anyway. So it's a.
No, I
it's
mean the mixing of the stuffing.
Yeah, it's okay. I can get away
You
with
do
it.
that seriously, really?
Plus, my eldest niece actually liked it so much she asked me how to teach her how to make it, so I did, and then she makes it for her friends up at college. So
Seriously.
yeah, so a couple other things here and there, but anyway.
There are going to be some responses to this podcast. We may have to, mute all comments.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Well, come on, cut me a little slack, people. I'm not even a Macedonian, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's Afternoons with Baba is the farmer's pick. So we'll post that in the show notes as well.
Excellent. Yes, we need some lighter mood at the end.
Absolutely, yeah. So all right, it's
enjoy your debate.
yeah. I'm not going to, but that's okay. Anyway, I got to run to the office, my day job, since this podcast doesn't pay anything.
Not yet. And we just lost any burek endorsements we might have gotten.
And we're certainly not going to get Mama Zyvar to sponsor this. So
Yeah, I doubt that. Or I doubt that I would.
I should mention finally that there's a little. I think I mentioned this before. I've got a little Middle Eastern shop down in Central Tucson that does sell various brands of Ivar. And
really.
Yeah, the last time I was down there, the guy said, we do have this this other Ivar, Mama's Ivar. You should try.
Nah.
And I said, buddy,
No.
I don't want to get into a long discussion, but I'm gonna pass. So anyway.
Not gonna have Zaev sludge in my defile my apartment,
Exactly.
my fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm off to work.
Okay, buddy.
Enjoy your evening.
You too.
All right, take care.
Take care, buddy.